good morning, and welcome to the wilds of Africa with us, WildEarth TV. You, in case you didn't know, are now on a live dawn safari here from the middle of South Africa's premier wildlife area, the Kruger National Park. World famous, iconic area, and you're most welcome. We are very pleased to have you along for the ride. My name is James Henry. On camera today, we have Wiam the wildebeest, who is dressed not unlike a sort of, well, he's just very camouflaged today. On the other vehicle, we have the irascible, enthusiastic, and highly charged Brent Leo Smith, and on camera with him, Andrew the Aardvark, also dressed like a bank robber today. In the final control, Kirsty the redhead on the major controls, and next to her, Tara Dales and her sultry tones in the directing to position. Somewhere knocking about is Eugene, fixing various difficulties with the technical things that we have, and you, please, are required as the other members of the cast of this show. Without your interactive comments and questions, really the show becomes an entirely boring affair, so please send through your questions, #SafariLive, and questions at wildearth.tv should you wish to use the email. Like I have said before, the South African Postal Service is now into its 10th month of strike, so a postcard is not going to work, and the telephone signal out here is pretty poor, so don't phone us. Now, we are in the middle of the Kruger National Park, as I said, and it's a kind of eerily overcast morning. About 14 degrees Celsius, they tell me. Feels a bit warmer than that to me. And 56 degrees Fahrenheit if you happen to be living in the 19th century. And our plan today is to head down to the south. We haven't had a lion on Djuma for the last week or so, and our plan is to try and see if we can find some tracks of lions coming onto Djuma during the course of the morning. Whoa, morning. That was almost horribly embarrassing. Okay, well, after that elegant dismount, that's what we're going to do. Brent has checked off to the northeast for tracks of the Nkuhuma Pride, our sort of, I don't hesitate to say resident, but our most commonly seen lions here, and I think they've headed off towards Arathusa and Simbambili, so he will be on their tracks as fast as anyone else in the world could possibly be. So fear not, if they are to be found, he will find them. We're going to go to the south and see if there hasn't been some sort of crossing over, perhaps from the Matimba males who were south of us, and also maybe the Styx Pride. Otherwise, there's plenty of beautiful stuff to look at on the way, and we'll keep you posted as the first signs of spring start to show. And just before I start up this 2.8 litre V6 engine, straight six, sorry Viam, I do apologise profusely for that, it's a straight six engine. I'm going to let you listen for 20 seconds, because every morning the dawn chorus is getting slightly louder and louder as the day length gets longer as we progress to spring. So let's just listen for 20 seconds and then I will tell you what I've heard. Right, so what you're listening to, you can hear off to the left, perhaps, not sure how directional your sound is, but off to the left in the drainage line we've got some robins calling. There's a hoopoo going boop boop boop, boop boop boop. There's a crested barbet behind us going some francolins all the way around on the ground, making their little territorial calls. I heard an emerald spotted wood dove going doo, 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 doo. Drongos everywhere, the odd lark. There's something else. Anyway, lots of calls, and they're starting to get louder and louder as we head towards spring. Now, I don't think that this overcast condition is going to bring us anything in the form of rain, but there is moisture, of course, in the air, and so it's a little bit dewy, and it is very magnificent. But here we go with the 2.8 litre straight 6 BMW engine. Here we go. Just plugged myself in. Very important, otherwise the fairly irascible redhead on directing one position gets a little upset. So we need to be careful of that all the time. Without them, and just to let you know, to remind you, of course, tomorrow we start half an hour earlier. So we're going to start at our time, 6 o'clock, and wherever you in the world, I'm not sure what time that will be for you, but it will be at 0600 Central African time. We'll start the morning drive, and then the afternoon we're going to start a half an hour later, just so we get more of the evening, and we're going to start 3:30 Central African time. So you can do the conversions, or I suppose just arrive at your computer half an hour earlier and half an hour later. Also some bulbuls calling. I've just seen one flitting off into the bush, too difficult to film. And they're also fairly absent during the winter, so it's quite nice to see them back. Just quickly, we're going to have a look at this tree here. If you don't mind, on the jackalberry there. A tree that does not stick with convention. You can see it's just starting to lose its leaves now. And unlike many of the others, it'll lose those leaves very quickly and replace them equally as quickly. In fact, if you look to the left-hand side of the tree, that's it there, you can see that it has already lost those leaves, and the rest will go in fairly short order and be replaced pretty quickly in time for the new sort of season. That's a jackalberry. Diospirus mispiliformes. Say that early in the morning a few times to wake the brain up. Good, and there we go. Hippopotamus tracks on the road, which is unusual. I think the hippos now will be basically foraging further and further from the water where they would normally be, and that's because obviously the amount of grass available for them to eat is further and further away from the water as the dry season progresses. So I mean, there's no water near where we are now other than at the big dam just north on Buffelshoek. Hook. So I think that's probably is where they've come from, and that's quite a distance. Probably about 2 miles, 3 kilometers as the crow flies. Maybe not that far. We're now closing in on Gowrie Waterhole, where yesterday we had a magnificent sighting of some marabou storks trying desperately to eat catfish, but the catfish were too big for them. I didn't see one take a catfish. And an incredible sunrise through the mist we experienced. But we're not going to have that today. This bank of cloud is much too thick. What we'd call stratos clouds, I believe. Sort of low-hanging, thick, ominously grey. But like I say, I quite like having the odd morning like this. I wouldn't like to have it every day, but I quite like having it now, just once in a while. was talking about some of the bird calls as we were driving along, and one of the most ubiquitous calls we have out here is from the drongo or mantengu in Shangaan. And mantengu makes many calls. And Kathy from Memphis, Tennessee, you would like to know exactly what kind of call they make. Kathy, it's difficult to say. They make a sort of quite lilting squawk, if you can have such a thing as a lilting squawk. But they also try and mimic other birds a lot. And they mimic pearl-spotted owls, we've heard them doing. We've heard them trying to do francolins. I've heard them trying to do robins. I've heard them trying to do various other kinds of birds. And like I have said before, we don't really know why. We don't really know why it is that they mimic. There are various explanations for it, but in terms of an exact reason for why mimicry occurs, we're really not that sure. There is nothing at Gowrie Waterhole that we can see, so I think we'll just carry on. In fact, we might go over the wall. Let's go over the wall, Ben. Another little listen. Last night there were no lions calling from where we could hear. There were a couple of hyenas that got into our camp, which was quite interesting, and they made a noise the likes of which, I mean, if you think about the soundtrack to Jurassic Park, for example, you think about the sound that some of those dinosaurs make. That's basically what those hyenas sounded like. It was absolutely deafening, highly impressive to hear them going and then making their squeaks and laughs like they do in The Lion King. Let's have a look at some catfish over there. You can see the water's drying out every single day. It's starting to dry out. Ooh, hang on a sec. Bill? Hello? There's a migrant bird there. Can you see on the left-hand side of the that's it, there he is. Yeah, that's him there. That, everybody, if my powerful binoculars do not deceive me, is a common sandpiper. And that's an unusual bird because it is migrant and it has arrived, it must have arrived back sort of yesterday, because we have scoured this waterhole for many weeks and not seen one of those. That's quite nice to see, a common sandpiper. My father always said I had legs like a sandpiper, which I don't think is particularly kind, albeit true. Let me try and find... Ooh, big catfish. I'll find you a picture of the common sandpiper. Right, I can't find the picture of the common sandpiper in my book at the moment. Oh no, I have. Here we go. Here he is. Right, that's him there, everybody. That is the common sandpiper. And as we look at the common sandpiper, not a massively impressive bird, except when you consider the incredible distance it has traveled to be here. Thousands of kilometers all the way from Eurasia to be down here. It is quite an impressive bird. So from one impressive bird, we're going to go to an impressive human being. We're going to cross over to Brent Leo Smith, and he will give you an idea of what he's going to be doing this morning and possibly show you an animal or two. I will see you in just a little while.
Good morning and welcome on the Sunrise Safari. My name is Brent Leo Smith and I'm going to be your guide, and I've got Andrew on camera with me. And there we have a female giraffe peeking out behind a marula. And we've got a bit of a sad story to tell with this giraffe. If we look carefully down at her left back leg, she has a broken ankle. When she moves, it is far more noticeable, and it is almost sitting at a 90-degree angle from the bottom of her, what is it, tibia or fibia? I can't remember. Andrew?
Let's go for tibia.
Tibia. So the elongated sort of shin bone, and her leg is sitting at almost a 90-degree angle to that. And obviously, from a giraffe's point of view, this is quite a big problem. Will make her a much easier target to lions, and she's probably very lucky. There we go, we can see it there, and you can see the swelling there, and that is definitely a clean break. That is not a muscle injury or whatnot. So guys, why don't you tell me how you think this giraffe broke its back left ankle? And you can send your answers through to questions@wildearth.tv or use the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. How do you think this giraffe broke its ankle? So she is in a bigger group of giraffe. We saw two cross the road before her, and off to the left there's some more crossing up, which might cross the road shortly. We'll go have a look at the other two. We don't want to drive any closer to this female with the broken ankle. We might cause her distress and might cause her to move again, which would actually hurt her even more. So if we do try follow her, we might go around the front onto another road and see what happens there. But at the moment we'll catch up with the others who are all able-bodied. Have a quick look through there, Andrew. We can see it quite clearly. And you can see there how it's at that sort of, maybe not quite 90, or probably a 55, 60-degree angle. And when we saw her walking on it, it does push through to a 90-degree angle, even though she tries to keep the weight off it, which she's doing at the moment. Her leg is just above the ground. So far she hasn't lost any condition, but I'm sure it must be incredibly painful. Still feeding normally. But there we go, as she moves, you can see there how it's dragging and how she's keeping the weight off it. So at the moment she's generally only using 3 of her legs. Let's go have a look. These others are about to pop out into the road in front of us. So far I can see about 5 or 6 giraffe. Used to be a youngster here, not quite a full adult up ahead of us. Young female. So we've got 2 different theories about how this poor giraffe might have broken its ankle. And Kevin thinks she might have stepped in a hole. Oh, I apologize. It's a young male. He might have stepped in a hole. Or Karen thinks possibly fighting. And both are very, very good and plausible answers. If a giraffe is moving normally though, not running, it's even if they did step in a hole or whatnot, it's very unlikely that they would have broken an ankle. With fighting, then it is a possibility. I probably think that the giraffe was trying to get away from lions, and in that really sort of fast run could have stepped in a hole and broken that ankle. Here we go. See how it's really favoring. See how it's just hovering off the ground there. What this does do, unfortunately for this giraffe, because I'm almost 100% certain that this is a natural injury, it is not a man-inflicted injury. So, unfortunately for this giraffe, we will not interfere in its injury at all. And it does make it a very, very soft target for lions. Now, giraffe will often, in defense of lions, kick with both their front feet or back feet. So it basically renders it not defenseless, but it is going to be much harder for this animal to defend itself against the pride of lions now. We can hear that raucous call of a grey go-away bird. Go-away! Go-away! So Lynn also agrees that with me that probably stepped in a hole while running away from a predator, and these type of injuries do happen. I've seen them on giraffe quite a few times, and normally it doesn't take too long before they bump into a pride of lions or whatnot, and that's sort of the end of the suffering. So out here it can be very harsh, but we must remember this is how nature has been functioning for millennia. So all we can do is hope that the giraffe doesn't suffer too much before the lions catch it, and I'm quite sure lions will catch it, and hopefully we might be around for that. It'll be a very interesting sighting to watch. And the other two are just off to the left. I'm just waiting for them to try cross the road. As we approached that female as she was about to cross earlier, she did move back into the bush, so obviously not as relaxed as some of the giraffe we see. So I'm just going to stand by and let them cross in their own time. So that giraffe who's got the broken ankle, Laura's made a very interesting observation, and a very true observation. She says, won't it be hard for him to drink? And it probably will, Laura. So it is going to make it a bit more difficult, and that could lead to a bit of a loss of condition. And coupled with a broken ankle, it's going to make it very hard for this animal to survive. Still, even though with the broken ankle, there's only two predators that might possibly take advantage of this situation, and that's lions and hyenas. I think the animal's in too good a condition for the hyena to consider it now, but definitely if condition drops a lot in the next couple of weeks, a large clan of hyenas would definitely consider taking on a giraffe like that as a viable prey source. So it's going to be quite interesting, and you probably find this giraffe isn't going to move too far from this general area. It will probably try keep up with the others, but it is going to find difficulty. And the name giraffe actually comes from the Arabic word, which means, it was zarafa, which means the one who walks swiftly, and obviously on three legs. definitely not going to be as swift as the others. So it will definitely try to keep up with the rest of the group, but whether it is able to or not, only time will tell. And see, there's no apparent drop in condition yet, and also just looking at that injury and the swelling, it's probably happened quite recently. You can see there how trying to take weight off that black leg. So, giraffe being a browser, Robin in California is wondering, would this giraffe search out any particular leaves to try alleviate the pain? And well, strangely enough, Robin, that tree it was just browsing on, and it looks like I might browse another one now, is generally not a tree giraffe would eat too often. Well, it's not, I can't see, it's moved on to a smaller, but it is, yes. It's called a Terminalia sericea, or a silver cluster leaf. And they do have anti-inflammatory and pain-killing properties. But they do eat them from time to time at this time of the year. It's not that common. I'm not sure whether it's specifically searching out for those Terminalias, or it just happens to be eating Terminalias at the moment. As far as I'm aware, I'm not 100% sure. I've never heard of giraffe purposely seeking out medicinal trees to eat. Apart from when it comes to issues with their stomach and worms and other parasites like that, giraffe, elephants, baboons, black rhino, kudu have all been known to feed off tumbuertes, and that is actually, the leaves are quite noxious, and if they eat them, it sort of causes a cleanse of their stomach and to expel parasites. But I've never heard of them going for pain medication from the trees. Not to say it's not possible at all. As I say, there's so much, we think we know a lot, but there's so much we don't. And that's the wonderful thing about being on these safaris, is you can learn something new every single day. It looks like they might cross the road now, the others. So as we look at two of the other members of the giraffe herd, Robin from California, again, thanks for another question, Robin, is wondering, would the other members of the herd push the injured giraffe out as it slows them down or draws attention? I don't think so, Robin, as a giraffe probably would not do that, but what would happen is it would get left behind. But if I was a giraffe and survival was my end game, I'd hang around with the giraffe with the broken ankle, because if a pride of lions happened to come upon us, they would definitely notice the injury on that giraffe and focus their attention on the injured giraffe and leave the fit and healthy giraffe alone. So speaking of giraffe herds, let's see who can remember what is the collective noun, the original Victorian collective noun for a group of giraffe. And you can send your answers through to questions@wildearth.tv or use the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. Let's see if we can sneak a little bit closer. The injured one has moved off a bit into the thickets. As I said, we don't really want to drive and put any more pressure on that injured animal, which might cause it to hurt itself even more than it already is. So if that giraffe happened to live in an area where there were no predators, so a sort of predator-free game reserve, and judging by how jumpy these giraffe are, that it is possible that they have been chased by a predator quite recently and they are still a little bit nervous. So we're going to leave them now as they move off. Well, chatting about predators, Siberia, one of our zoomies, thinks that possibly a large leopard like Tingana or Mvula, maybe the Anderson male, might be able to take down this giraffe. Unfortunately not Siberia. That giraffe, a big male leopard, we're looking at the leopards in this area, Tingana maybe 75 to 80 kilograms, Mvula a bit smaller, and Anderson I haven't seen yet, so I can't judge, but also probably around the 80 kilogram mark. And that giraffe we were looking at, that injured one, even though it was a young male, is probably around 1,000 kilograms, 800 to 1,000 kilograms. Unfortunately, I don't think a large leopard would even consider attacking even an injured giraffe like that. Your cooperative hunters like lions and hyenas would definitely have a much better chance. And even a cooperative hunter like wild dog, I don't think they would try animals far too big. Well, off you go, giraffes. We're going to continue on our adventures, but to continue on what I was saying before this giraffe moved off, if these giraffes lived in a predator-free game reserve, so sort of, as we call them, a bokkie plaas, which basically means a buck or antelope farm, without your lions and hyenas and leopards and things like that, you might find that that giraffe would survive. That injury might solidify and calcify, and in that broken position it wouldn't be comfortable, but there's a good chance it would survive. But in a natural system like this, where we have all the facets, the predators, the prey, it's very unlikely that that animal will survive. But not impossible. We are often proved wrong by the resilience of some of these animals out here, so it is quite incredible some of the injuries the animals come back from. So the collective nouns for giraffes, there's actually two answers, and quite a few have got it right. Kathy, Anna Marie, Deb all said a tower of giraffe, and the other answer is a journey, and a few of you also got journey. I personally prefer a journey of giraffe. I just think it sounds quite wonderful. You can just see them sort of a journey of giraffe crossing the African plains, and Sean and Teresa got journey of giraffe. So we are currently on the border between Arathusa and Djuma, and we're just checking if there's been any movements of tracks between. And just an update on the lions for you guys. Andrew and I did find the tracks of the Nkahuma Pride this morning. They came out of Sibambili right at the entrance gate and then crossed the tiny little portion of Djuma and went north into Buffalo's Hook. And I've just heard on the radio that the Birmingham boys are down in the east, quite far in the east. They've just crossed from Nkoro into Torchwood. So they are around, and their general direction is west. So fingers crossed that they keep moving through towards Cheetah Cutline. So we're just having a quick and close look for tracks, and we've got a nice little herd of impala here. We can see a nice little herd of impala, and some of them are still quite fluffed up as it is a bit chilly, particularly that guy on the left, and you can see that sort of darker coloring coming through. And what they're doing there, I know a lot of you guys, oh hello boys, a little bit of play sparring. These guys are still too young to have partaken in the rut earlier. So they'll probably only be large enough at next year's rut. So this sort of playing is practice for the big leagues, and they'll probably only get a chance to try compete for mating looking at their age in next year's rut. Possibly even then they might get defeated, and the rut after that will be their time to challenge for ladies. Let's see, there we go. You can see it's not very serious fighting at the moment. You can see that larger male behind is taking no notice of these youngsters, and they're sparring. You can see not very serious, they're not really hitting each other very hard. Well, that got a little bit more serious there for a second. The one on the right got the upper hand, sort of got its horn below the neck and sort of almost started twisting. So all these little techniques will probably come in handy in the rut at some stage. So these guys are about 2 years old, so this is their second season. So third year is the year where they might start looking to challenge for mating rights with a breeding herd of impalas. And that's enough of that. So this is the area young Sindile disappeared into yesterday, somewhere into this drainage line to the east here. So it is quite good. We've got a little alarm system in place here on the boundary with these impala. So it's quite nice to just sit here and listen. And we know, I'm pretty sure if he is very close by, he would have heard the sound of those horns. And that definitely at his age would be enough to pique his curiosity. I almost want to hear that sort of explosion of snorts that signifies that they've spotted a predator. Oh, we're going to have a three-way tussle, it looked like for a second there. So Lisa's had a comment here, watching these young males spar. She would like to know, is it possible that their eyes might get poked out with these horns? Most definitely. Sorry guys, I've just got to be on the Game Drive radio. Craig's trying to get hold of me. Morning Craig, yeah, I've checked access to Gari Gate. I'm now on Triple M, close to the junction with Gari Main. I only update, there's some in Lulamit opposite Impala planes, one with a broken ankle. No updates for Safari and Dow. So it looks like they're moving back across. And we're now in this area where young Sindile was. Sorry guys, Craig is very talkative this morning. In the drainage line between Triple M and Philemon's cut line to the west of, northwest of Gari Main. Okay, well let's carry on and I think it's time to get off these main highways as there's a bit of traffic now as we get later in the morning. So while we get ourselves off this main road, as you can see there's a vehicle up ahead of us, we're going to cross across to James, who's got something who's about the same size as that truck.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Wendy. That is not Wendy, in fact that is an elephant, a young bull, and I think that he's well, a little bit like Scott. He's a sort of magazine cover model quality elephant. He's a young bull, not very big yet, but he's got some good ivory, and he's kind of got a very elegant look about him. I think he's probably in the region of about, I'd say almost 20 years. But he's not very large, but beautifully formed. And there's a herd. We've just heard on the radio not too far from here, and so I'm sure he's staying in sort of communication with them. Lovely young bull here. And he's eating the rootstock off a red bush willow or Combretum apiculatum tree. And their rootstock, of course, still sort of holds and harbours some form of nutrition as we head deeper and deeper into this dry season. There, we can see him pulling it out now. I mean, the dexterity of that trunk is quite astonishing. And the foot, hugely important, as you can see, hugely important part of the feeding mechanism. How he doesn't stand on his own nose, I'm really not sure. He's getting frustrated there. Isn't that amazing to see? He's just shaking off a bit of the dirt now. I don't think he's enjoying his breakfast particularly. Tugging and tugging at the bottom there. Now, as I've said before, you can see how an elephant's feeding mechanism, by pulling out the rootstock, by breaking down trees, by breaking up trees and perhaps not destroying them completely, has an enormous effect on the vegetation structure of an area. Now, there are some people who will tell you that to clear, so for example, some reserves in the Sabi Sands will actually bush clear, so they'll take away a lot of this thick bush that you can see around us here in order to open up sort of grassland areas. And some people say, well, you know, that's not very natural and maybe we shouldn't do that. And the question is, what is natural? People have been in this area for about 200 years, maybe almost 300, but certainly having an effect on the ecology for about 200 years. So we don't really, and there are no records from the earliest days of what this place truly looked like. But what we do know is that by the time the Kruger National Park was proclaimed in 1926, there were about 8 elephants left in this area. That's 8. No zeros on the end of that, just 8. There are now over 15,000. And that is probably much closer to a carrying capacity than 8. And so in the absence of those elephants, when there was so much hunting going on in the area, especially for the ivory, I think that you'll find this bush would have become a lot thicker and probably more closely resembles what it does now because of the lack of elephants. And earlier than that, I think you'd probably find, while it was probably still woodland, we call it broadleafed woodland, I think you'll find it was probably a lot more open because of the numbers of elephants. But that's just postulation. Fortunately, there are no written records from the local people who lived in this area prior to sort of the mid-19th century. So we don't really know what it looked like. Here's the odd anecdotal report from the first settlers that came in. Look at that. Isn't that incredible? How he spins it in his mouth. And that expulsion of gas that you heard there was in fact the elephant being flatulent, and that's not unusual because they are hindgut fermenters, a bit like a zebra, and so they do have to get rid of a lot of gas. All herbivores do, of course, but most of them are ruminants, and so the gas comes out the other end in the form of a belch or a burp. Can you just get in on his tail there? I mean, while I was talking about him being a magazine centerfold quality elephant, look how beautiful the long hairs on the end of his tail are. They almost look like they've been brushed. I suspect that this bull is going to be a magnificent creature, especially when he's a bit older. Not that he isn't already. You can hear him kicking that rootstock to pieces. You can see him ripping pieces off the rootstock of that combretum. And Tom in Seattle, you want to know how much sort of pulling or ripping strength they have. I'm not really sure how to answer that, Tom. But to say to you that I don't think it's quite as much as you might think it is. You can see there he holds it quite strongly, but the angle at which he pulls, I think, makes a huge difference to the amount that he's able to, or the amount of force that he's able to exert. So when they're pulling down, I've seen them break big thick tree branches by sort of wrapping their trunks around them and then pulling them down. They seem to be quite strong at that, but certainly pulling up that branch, the stuff that he's pulling up now, he's holding it with his trunk more than pulling and then kicking it with his feet. So I don't really know how to answer that question other than to say at some angles, so pulling down when he's using his weight, he seems to be quite a lot stronger than if he's pulling upwards and unable to use his weight.
Do you think an elephant has ever bitten his trunk?
And I've just had a question from VM. Do I think an elephant has ever bitten his trunk? I actually don't, and I'll tell you why. I think because their molar teeth are so far back in the mouth that for them to bite their trunks, it would be quite difficult. As we know, one of the characteristics of mammals, of course, is that they have hair. All the way from the blue whale down to the tiniest little shrew, they all have hair. And an elephant is no exception. And Lisa G says, interesting that an elephant is bald, but for the fact that he's got a few hairs around his mouth. Lisa, they are almost bald, and as they get older, they become progressively balder, a bit like me. But they have hair on the tail, of course, and then when they're born, they've got quite a thick, well, it's not thick, but they've certainly got a covering of hair on the head and sometimes extending down the back. But yes, you're absolutely right that they are bald mostly. And that is because, why, VM? They don't need to stay warm. Well done. So the smaller you are, the more fur you need to stay warm. Now, a big elephant like this, and even if you look at rhino, hippo, buffalo, the less hair is required because you lose heat much more slowly and you gain heat much more slowly than if you're a tiny little thing. So the smaller you are, the more fur you need. So you will find in an area like this, or in any area where animals live, the larger they are, the less hair they will have in comparison with the smaller ones. And then if you get to really cold areas, obviously the smaller animals, in fact a lot of the animals, will hibernate in order to escape the cold. Out here that's not necessary, but certainly the smaller animals definitely have more fur than the bigger ones. And you're going to see, as Lisa has pointed out, the elephant has virtually no fur at all. Very nice question. While we're looking at this elephant, and he's probably about 20, and when he's 25 to 30 he'll probably have his first mating event. And Edward, you want to know about genetic stock while we talk about breeding. And I say that there were about eight elephants in this area when it was proclaimed, and you want to know if all these elephants here are descended from those 8 elephants. Edward, I don't think that's the case at all. I know some were brought in, or some have been brought in at various times. I also think that the area was probably naturally recolonized in the absence of hunting, well, when hunting was removed. So remember, at that stage, there was no fence between us and Mozambique, there was no fence between us and Zimbabwe, and there were certainly elephants around there. Not as many as there are now, but I think you'll find that this area is probably mainly recolonized by other elephants. We're just going to go back to the elephant who's now tossing his food all over his face. He's not just playing. I think there's an element of playing the ectoparasites on his skin by tossing dirt on him. And we talk a lot about how elephants are sometimes right or left tusked, and you can tell that from the wear and tear on their tusks, but what they do seem to be also is right or left footed. And well, now I say that, he's starting to use his left foot, but he was predominantly using his right foot, and apparently that's pretty normal. He really is a magnificent bull, this. Just having a little smell of us, twisting his trunk to see what we're about. He sent dust there, scooting about 25 meters behind him. I don't know if you can hear, but there's definitely some crunching of trees off to the left-hand side of your screen, and that is because there is a herd of elephants somewhere around here. I think probably not making their way here, maybe making their way slowly towards Buffelshoek Dam, which is not far from here. He's digging himself a nice hole there. With his left foot, not his right. I don't know how he doesn't stand on his trunk. This is wonderful to see. You can see how dry the soil is. No moisture in it at all. And he's digging for the roots. See, he's just found another one. Now he'll snap it. The sideways kick. Really a very impressive display he's giving us. I think you'll find that he's staying within sort of audio contact of the herd. He's too young to be, well, he's not too young to be on his own, but I'm sure he's hanging around where he can hear the herd, just for comfort, and just doesn't want to quite move away from home just yet, I think. Now you see, Tom, we had that question about the pulling strength of his trunk there. He chose there not to pull that, not to try and snap that root that he's trying to eat now with his trunk. He used his foot to do it. I think it's quite difficult actually for them to pull upwards with that trunk, because the trunk is a little bit like, it's just like a slinky. I don't know if you remember the slinkies. That's how their sort of muscles are arranged in the trunk there. And so to pull downwards like that tends to stretch it quite a lot, I think. Let's just stick with him for a few more minutes and then we'll go and see the rest, try and find the rest of the herd. Wonderful. See if he doesn't break off a branch here. I'd have to get a little bit closer in there to just have a look, but I don't want to frighten him off, of course. Oh dear, I've unplugged myself. The very interesting question is we see this elephant trying to eat some wood, and we were looking at some elephant dung yesterday, some winter dung, which is full of wood. And Marilyn and Charlie, you ask a question about whether they get splinters or not. No, I don't think they do, not like us. Their skin is much too tough, much too thick, and they also, remember, they can eat the worst kind of knobthorn trees without kind of feeling any sort of ill effects. And so if the thorns are not getting them, I think splinters are probably a very minor concern. Remember also, splinters normally come from processed wood. You don't often get it from this kind of wet wood that the elephants are eating. I've never got a splinter from any of the wood out here, I must say. Maybe from the odd bit of dry firewood, but not from this stuff. He is really doing a job on the rootstock of that tree. Why he's chosen that particular one, I'm sure it is wondering itself. The dawn chorus is now completely quieted down. There's just the odd drongo calling. And otherwise everything has gone very quiet. And just to give you a small update on the lions, where they are, Djuma remains a lion-free zone at this stage for some reason, and perhaps just to give you a bit of a little bit of background, Djuma is I'm just gonna, before I carry on, we'll just wait and see what this bull does. Just watch him carefully. He's now playing with us a little bit. He's quite interested in what we want. There we go. All right. So I just want to quickly give you a line update, and then we're going to go across to Brent, who's got something quite exciting to tell you. The Birmingham boys are behind me. We're on the eastern boundary, so obviously, for those who don't know, animals can come and go as they please across these boundaries. We obviously have to adhere to human property laws. Birmingham boys behind us. Nkuhuma Pride seemingly somewhere around Simbambili, which we can't go to either. And the sticks remain to the south of us, probably with the Matimbas somewhere. So we're going to head across to Brent Leo Smith, the inimitable and irascible and enthusiastic, and he has found something very exciting, and I'll see you just a little bit later.
Welcome back, guys. I've just been for a little walk, and I'm not going to give away what I found, so I'm just going to ask Andrew to follow my eyes. And as you guys can see, we are with young Sindile atop a termite mound. So how we found him this morning is I left Andrew to twiddle his thumbs on the back of the vehicle, and I went walking in an area where I heard a squirrel alarm calling, and I was doing pretty much what Sindile is doing at the moment, moving from large termite mound to large termite mound. And I stood on top of a termite mound probably about 50 meters from here, and noticed him lying on top of a termite mound staring at me. So we had a wonderful little moment of staring at each other for about 2 minutes before I decided it was probably time to go fetch Andrew. He'd probably been alone for too long, and unlike Sindile, Andrew doesn't like to be left alone for too long. Looks like he might have seen something behind us. I can't see anything. I'm just gonna check over our shoulder. He is a bit higher than us, so he might have noticed something that we can't see from our lower elevation. Hello, little man. What are you off to go chase and cause trouble with now? So he's moving right behind the front of the vehicle. He has got that sort of stalking pose going. So I'm going to jump down and see what he is after. I wonder what he spotted. And that's quite often why we find leopards lying on top of large termite mounds. It gives them a great aerial view, and it works both ways. It can help them defend themselves against a possible predator, as well as giving them a really great vantage point to see possible prey species from. We're going to stay off to the side of him. He's definitely spotted something that we can't see. It could be a francolin, it could be a squirrel. And with young Sindile, who knows, it could be an elephant. Got that classic leopard stalk pose on at the moment. He's just stopped there and he's staring intently in front, and I still can't figure out what he's possibly stalking, but obviously movement of something caught his attention from the top of that termite mound. Sorry guys, I just got to be on the radio with Craig. He's trying to find us in the middle of this block. Standing by. Negative. He's moved slightly further north into the block at the moment. He's showing interest in something. If you keep coming from Shabam, you'll see where a lot of vehicles turned off quite close to the junction with Zoe's Road, and come in there, and then from there head sort of east. You should see quite a prominent two-track that's developed there. so excited to find out what he's stalking. So guys, we're just going to keep quiet and watch what's happening here now. Whatever it is, he is definitely getting closer. You can see how more measured his steps are, how more focused his concentration is. FM Craig, head slightly more east. There's 2 or 3 prominent termite rounds in a row. We're closest to the furthest east one. FM, there's 3 large termite mounds in a row heading towards the east. Craig, just stand by where you are. There's a steenbok between us and them. I can't see him. He's behind the termite from me. Can you see the Spenne? So guys, can you see that? There's a little steenbok that's digging. Like we saw it a while ago digging for grass tubers. It looks like a sub-adult steenbok. It's no more than 6 or 7 meters from him. You can just see in the top left. You can see Sindile at the bottom, and there you can just see the steenbok. Now it's a game of patience. Hopefully all this time alone, young Sindile has learned not to rush these storks. At the moment, the steenbok is still unaware of his presence. It looks like it might be burying its feces. It does occasionally look up in the direction of Sindile, but still more focused on either, I can't see whether it's digging for bulbs from the roots, or it's burying feces. Oh, Sindile, I think you just moved at the wrong time. No, he didn't. So we can't move the vehicle now in case we affect the outcome either way. I've also asked the other vehicle to just stay where they are. Okay, his body shape's changed. I know it's quite difficult to see behind that log, but he is almost getting into that sort of pounce position. He's flat on the ground, but his back legs are starting to come up a little bit to get that initial burst of speed. Sorry guys, just got to tell Craig, I have probably now 4 meters between the Ingo and the Spinne. So guys, if you hear those clicks, that's just me taking a few pictures. This is definitely the closest I've ever seen Sindile to a large kill, and he's so far conducted this stalk almost perfectly. Steenbok is still unaware of his presence. He's still digging. He's probably 4 meters away from that steenbok. He's now within that strike range. You can almost feel the tension building on this cloudy morning. Steenbok still looks occasionally towards where young Sindile is, but is still focused on whatever it's doing. I almost wonder if he's missed his opportunity for that burst of speed. His body position, I know it's difficult to see behind that dead combretum, has changed, and he's lowered his hips, so he's not in the pounce position anymore. I think Steenbok's turned its back to him for a second. It's starting to move slightly away from him. He's about to go. He's stalking again. Unfortunately, the steenbok's just behind that combretum. We've still got sight of Sindile. From where I think the steenbok's just spotted him. I can't see what's happening now. The steenbok's moved behind a tree, but it did look like it had initial recognition. Have you got the steenbok there, Andrew?
Yeah, there it is.
So it's popped out. It is staring quite intently in the direction of young Sindile. has young Sindile missed his opportunity? I feel he might have just. Steenbok's moving away from him. He can't afford to move at the moment. If he does, that steenbok will definitely spot him. Can't see him nicely. I just have a few rosettes I can see through a gap in the dead tree. His head is up slightly, which is not the best sign. I think if he wants to catch the steenbok, he's... Oh, okay, I can just see the steenbok's head popping through now. Distance now, probably about 8-9 meters. It's pushing the distance a little bit now for a leopard. Leopards generally prefer to make that pounce from about 5 meters. You can see his head up there through the gap in the trees. This is by no means over yet. The steenbok hasn't darted away at high speed. It's almost sixth sense has picked up that there's possible danger around. It's still not convinced, so it hasn't run away. It is definitely far more aware than it was when it was digging. . 10-12 meters. He's still stalking, but I think he might have blown it. Oh, you can try coming a bit closer. His head's up now. If you put your binos on me, I'll point them out to you.
Can you see the steenbok?
No. Sorry guys, I'll be back with you in a second. I'm just trying to help Craig. If you see there's that quite big combretum apiculatum in front of me, he's just below that. And so his head's up, his ears are out. We're just going to move slightly. The steenbok's now probably 15-20 meters away. But definitely probably one of the better storks I've ever seen young Sindile attempt. We can still see the steenbok. The steenbok spotted him and took off at a rate of knots. So he's up. He sat up at the exact wrong time. There he is there. But definitely one of the better stalks I've ever seen him undertake. Showed a lot more patience than we've seen him do in the past. So he seems like, oh, what do I do now? From Blair Sinclair, who I tend to agree with, he should have gone earlier. He missed his opportunity when that steenbok had its head down to the ground, body facing generally away from him. I definitely agree with you, Blair. And Blair says due to inexperience, and that is 100% correct. I think one thing that will come of him spending so much time alone at the moment is he will have to hone his hunting skills. And even though that whole stalk is definitely, for me, the best stalk I've ever seen him do. And definitely he came very close without being spotted. So a really, really good stalk. And that slight bit of inexperience lost him that meal at the end of the day. But really, really, really fantastic to be able to watch that. And definitely, that's one of the most amazing things we have about spending so much time with these different animals, is we actually get to watch them develop into the apex predators they will become. We could hear a squirrel alarming in the distance, and well done, Remy, for picking up on that as well. And Remy is wondering, is that because of young Sindile? I think, Remy, that was too far away. Those squirrels were alarm calling quite close to the main road, and it was, it's probably 150 to 200 meters from here. They could have been alarming at something else. I don't think they would have been able to see him from that distance. Well, we're going to move shortly to try to get into a better position so we can have a look at his wonderful face. Not the best possible spot for us. That's the best we're going to get for now. I'm quite sure he's going to move shortly, but just quickly, if you guys can have a look here, because at one stage, this was quite early on in the stalk from where I was sitting, unfortunately I was a little bit further to the right, so I had a slightly better view. But if you have, oopsie, wrong button. If you have a look, we can see the steenbok there and Sindile there. So, there we go. So guys, what I'm going to do quickly is I'm going to hand over the control of the sighting to Craig, so I don't have to talk on the radio at all. And I'll be with you, and I won't have to listen too much to the radio, so I'll turn it down and let Craig control the sighting. Stations, I'm handing over control of this Shadows Montagne to Craig. So if we sit here and we look to the termite mound where we first found him, and I was chatting about why leopards like to sit on termite mounds, and if he had been lying flat on the ground, he probably would not have spotted the movement of that steenbok. And then just to the left of screen, we can see the termite mound. So that elevated position would have given him the ability to spot that steenbok from a distance. So there we can see there's the top of that termite mound. And that enabled him to see quite a much bigger distance than he would have been able to if he had been on the ground. So we often find predators utilizing termite mounds as vantage points. So, as I've been saying, it's probably the most complete stalk I've ever seen Sindile. Nearly complete. He didn't quite get all the way to the finish line there. Bugsy commented, was he expecting it to walk towards him like the birds do? Bugsy, that's always the possibility. I think he assumed the steenbok might have continued to dig and fiddle around in that area a bit longer. Just that little bit of inexperience. While that steenbok was digging, he probably should have made that initial charge. His body did shape to do that, and then for some reason he flattened out again. Now he's sniffing where the steenbok was. And he's going to have a wee on top of where the steenbok was. Can hear those squirrels again. I don't think they're alarming at him just yet. So it's absolutely incredible to watch that probably 90% of hunting behavior in the big cats is instinctive. And they don't watch their mothers hunt very regularly. We're going to move so we can keep up with him. And Lynn was just saying, it's incredible that is instinct. And a lot of people seem to think that if you have a lion that's been kept in captivity or a leopard, that you've got to go now teach this animal to hunt. There's one very simple way to teach a lion or a leopard to hunt. Let it get hungry. And it will catch something. That instinct to hunt is so overpowering, and inbred, it's there. They're not going to get away from it. I think he's going to now move to the next termite mound vantage point. No, he's putting his head down a hole. That's not very clever. The warthog came charging out of there, young man. And he's still a little bit small to think about taking on an adult warthog. Possibly a piglet. It's more his sort of size range. Guys, I hope you're getting some great screenshots. He has provided us with so many over the last while. And definitely not only a firm favorite of all our viewers, but definitely a firm favorite of all of us from the WildEarth team. You smelt something there. Could be another spot the steenbok was earlier. Difficult to say. Yeah. So I'm just going to try to loop my head. I think he might head for another termite mound. So I just want to get there before him. Watch your heads there. There we have the nice large termite mound, and he's making a beeline for it. Oh. There we go. Right on cue. Oh, Craig's just telling me I should make him turn towards their vehicle, but I'm quite selfish, so I say I should keep looking at us. Now, is he going to descend or is he going to find a spot to perch? Looking at all those holes, it looks like I can see some dwarf mongoose dung around there. Maybe he's smelling the mongoose. So, even though he's not quite hungry yet, he's definitely getting there. Anyway, off he goes, and it looks like he's moving from termite mound to termite mound, using those vantage points. You can hear those squirrel alarming. I wonder if he's considering to try chase another squirrel up a tree. So from where we saw him yesterday, he's probably not even moved 500 meters. And Insomniac was asking that, and she's wondering, is this why? Is this because he's waiting for his mother to return? More than likely, and there still is no sign or no report on where she is. So it's going to be interesting to see how long he stays here. I think he's been here a week in this general area. whether he is going to continue to stay here or start moving a little bit more out from here on his own without his mom. So we're going to shoot round to the next termite mound. So while we go catch up with young Sindile, we're going to cross back across to James, who's with one of the biggest threats to young Sindile.
Hello everybody, I hope you've had a magnificent time with Sindile, and from cat we go to another spotted half cat. Just in there you will be able to see the adult hyena, and just laying down in fact is the little baby, now suckling, and the adult was giving this little one a great cleaning when we arrived here, and now the little one, you can see, is still being cleaned. It's its tail sticking out the back there, and she's just having a little bit of a suckle.
What? So guys, welcome back. We're still trying to move. He's moving quite quickly. He's already bypassed the next termite mound and is on his way through to those quarry thickets. So it's just taking us a little bit of time to duck and dive through these thickets. Oh, there's another steenbok running. I'm not sure you even saw that one. Let's try see where he is. Craig's up ahead and should still be with him. We got stuck behind a really big log. You did see that steenbok, and I'm sure that steenbok was galloping away from him. The one positive for him with, there we go, you can see the steenbok there and the leopard there, and the steenbok's definitely noticed him, so he's moving away from the steenbok. You can see a bit of displacement behavior there after his failed attempts at the steenbokkies. The one positive thing about a steenbok is they live in such a small territory. I'm sure he's going to have multiple opportunities if he stays in this area to possibly catch those steenbok. Okay, we're going to see where he's off to now. Can you still see him, Andrew? Oh, there we go. I just got him in the distance there. Okay, let's go this way. It's amazing at this time of the year how those camouflage colors just blend in. So while he's on the move, we're going to see where he's off to. There's a potential that there could be impala or something else down here as we move towards this sort of edge of the seep line. And it gets a bit more open and there's a bit more grass around that will attract some of the other larger species. But this is the wonderful thing about young male leopards. They're quite adventurous when they're left alone, and also they stay in a very small area quite often. So we are looking like absolute rock stars at the moment being able to find him, but that's probably because he hasn't moved 500 meters in a week. The one thing from a true tracking point of view is almost impossible to track because there's literally tracks crisscrossing this area. But the joy is if you just walk around, eventually you'll spot him. Let's move along. So he's crossing the road. He is moving into an area that is potentially quite difficult to stay with him. I mentioned it for those of you on the Sunset Safari, why we didn't spend more time crashing and bashing looking for him, because when he moves into those tamboti thickets, we can't drive through there. They're a very slow growing tree and they don't spring back like a lot of the other trees we drive over, and they are very important trees. They do hold the erosion areas around new drainage lines together. So obviously we don't want to cause any damage to the bush around us. So if he does happen to move into those tamboti thickets, unfortunately we will be leaving him. But for the moment he's heading parallel to them, so all is fine and dandy. And it might be a grey morning and sunrise safari here, but it's certainly not a dreary one with young Sindile. So I know a lot of people quite often consider this low light very difficult to take screenshots or do photography in. I really like it. It makes you think a little bit more about the pictures you take and the screenshots you do, and also gives a really, really wonderful opportunity for black and white conversions. So why don't you guys try that today? Instead of your normal color screenshots, see if you can get any epic black and white conversions of young Sindile. I'm just going to think about how I can get through. It's a bit thicker around here. Andrew, you feeling skinny? Think we're going to fit through there?
Yes.
Okay. Andrew thinks we're feeling skinny this morning, so we're going to try. He's changed his mind. He's decided to come visit us much closer. So I mentioned a term I should have explained a little bit better to you guys earlier, and Sammy's just asked me to clarify what displacement behavior is, and especially pertaining to a leopard. So once he realized the steenbok had seen him, instead of sort of re-attempting to chase after it, Leopards will often then sort of, like he did, go stretch on a branch, clean their claws, or the most common one you see, and specifically with adult leopards, is once they've been spotted, they lift their tail high up into the air, and they walk right in front of whatever they've been stalking, pretending that they weren't actually stalking them. So it's sort of, once the game's up, once they've been spotted, they sort of start showing that behavior. Lions do it, but it's not as obvious with a leopard, where they pop their tail high up in the air like that, or sort of start stretching and clawing at a tree. You can see how well that camouflage works there. You come out wide, Andrew. See how he just sort of, even though he's moving, he just melts into this winter bushveld. You can just see the movement between these two trees. And there he goes. And you can see how effective that breaking up of the coat is, and that camouflage. Just waiting to see where he's heading off to next, and that will dictate where Andrew and I are going to try head off to next. But we've got a nice general direction for him now. Unfortunately, he's moving parallel to those tambusi thickets. There we go. Oh, where did he disappear to? I saw him a second ago. There he goes, running up a tree. Again, using a vantage point to his advantage. Getting a bit of height so you can see a bit further. I'm just going to take my jacket off quickly. Even though it is quite overcast, it has warmed up extensively. Giving himself a good little preen now. And if you hear zips and things, it's Andrew doing the same, also losing a layer. Morning, Andrew.
Morning, how are you?
Very thanks.
Good.
So Andrew's come to join us with this young male.
Just thinking softly. Shadow, sunshine. These shadows come, yeah.
Nearly a whoopsie there.
Just do that.
Andrew, if you want to come on the other side of us here.
That side.
Yeah,
Alright,
you should do. So we all work together, all the guys in different lodges, to bring their guests and you, our guests, the best possible experiences and the best possible sightings. Oh, that was close. Oh, now he's decided he doesn't want to face us.
How was that? Yeah, good.
So remember my challenge to you guys, see who can get the best black and white screenshot of young Sindile this sunrise safari. Itchy, yeah? And if you guys hear that noise coming through, that's a aeroplane probably coming to deliver a very happy guests who are about to start their safari somewhere here in the northern Sabi Sands. So obviously, being left alone by his mother at this young age, he is a little bit vulnerable. And Rene was wondering what would happen if he came across a 2-year-old leopard. Would they fight? I think if Sindile had any street smarts, he would run. A 2-year-old leopard is physically a lot bigger and would probably try kill him. So they would fight if it came to that, but I think if young Sindile's got any street smarts, he would run as fast as possible away from that larger leopard. Anyway, it looks like hopefully he'll come down that branch straight towards us. And we can see his paws there, and they look almost too big for his body. And with young male leopards, that's quite common. They do have quite a lot of growing to do into their feet, just like I did. I was a tiny 15-year-old boy with a size 12 shoe, but eventually I did catch up to my feet, and I'm pretty sure he will as well. Whoopsie, that was a bit of a bumble. So we're talking about his size and his development and growth at the moment. Oh, let's play with a piece of bark. And Chris is wondering what's his approximate weight at the moment. Chris, I'd say he's probably around 40 kilograms. Maybe a little bit less, but around 40 kilograms. About the same size as a smallish female leopard for this area.
Yeah, the
two vehicles unlocked.
Can't seem to get comfortable. He seems to keep choosing these slightly uncomfortable fallen down trees to try rest on.
Down is junction. Yeah, Freeman's cut line there. Zoe. So yeah, on that big brown hybrid tree. We wait for that. Even if you come along that way, I'll stop.
Yeah, we might have some ticks there that you can see, that very sharp little sort of nibbling as he licks, so he might be popping some ticks. And even though they look like they're luscious and clean animals, they will have a lot of ticks and fleas and other ectoparasites on them. Almost keep waiting for him to stumble, and there he goes. He's going to walk down that branch. I don't know if it's going to... Oh, it will hold him. And then attack the end of it.
Yeah.
So guys, I hear there's a lot of you sending in black and white screenshots. I can't wait to go have a look at them at the end of the sunrise safari. I'm very excited, and I'll pop one up later on today and we can have a comparison. Not quite finished preening yet. Giving himself a good de-fleeing and de-ticking at the moment. I'm quite sure if I had as many fleas and ticks as he did, I wouldn't be able to sit still, as I battle to sit still as it is. But if I had all those itches, I would probably be a constant ball of motion. Here we go. You see that very distinct, and I'm pretty sure most of you at home would have seen your domestic dogs and cats also use that sort of very short little sort of nibble. Sometimes they will even do it to us as their owners, and it is preening, and it is in social animals and with cats and dogs that live with us a form of affection. But at the moment he's not doing it to his mom, and mom's not doing it to him. Mom's off chasing the eligible bachelors of the Northern Sabi Sands, so he's got to flee and de-tick himself. And with leopards, and specifically male leopards, as they get older and become more and more solitary, unfortunately for them, they only get that de-fleeing and de-ticking from mom, and once they've reached independence, they have to look after themselves. So good practice for the young boy.
You drove in fast. No, the radio was.
So obviously there's a lot of speculation whether Shadow's absence from young Sindile is a good thing or bad thing. And Georgianne in particular was wondering that. Well, Georgianne, it does minimize or lessen his chances of survival to full adulthood. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens once she's finished mating with the other males. Will she come back to continue to rear him, or will she abandon him now, and if she's become impregnated by those matings, and just leave him to fend for himself? And unfortunately, at the moment, all we can do is speculate. It is very unusual for a female leopard to leave a male this young. It isn't as unusual for female leopards to leave female leopards at about a year old, and I have seen other female leopards become independent at a year old. But it is very unusual for a male, and there's some quite interesting theories about why this is. And James and I happened to be at that Panthera lecture a while ago, and they explained some new sort of information that's coming forward. And what it is that the female leopards will take a lot more time and put a lot more effort into raising a male cub. The reason for this is, theoretically, that male cub has far more potential to spread her genes, because it'll move out of her natal territory and will be mating with leopards that are completely unrelated in quite a long distance away from where they were brought up. So quite often female leopards will invest a lot more time and energy into raising a male cub than a female cub. They give the female cubs a bit of a better chance, but what they do is they will actually give away a piece of the core part of their territory to a female cub. And so she gets a sort of nice start out in life with a really good territory, and then she'll go off and fight and maybe extend her territory, being older and more experienced. And that's how they give their female cubs a good chance of survival. And with male cubs, they'll often raise them till about 2 years, and even sometimes longer than that. I've seen nearly 3 years that a male cub has been dependent on its mother. So normally, always male cubs will be independent much later than female cubs. And that is what's quite unusual about this current scenario. And it's going to be very, very interesting to watch over the next few months, even the next few days and weeks, to whether Shadow returns or he is out on his own. If he is on his own, it's by no means a doom and gloom, but his chances of success are far lessened. As you could see, that little bit of experience in that steenbok hunt we watched this morning, there is still a very good chance he can survive, but obviously less so if Shadow, or less so if Shadow isn't looking after him. If Shadow is looking after him to that sort of 2-year period, be much bigger, far more adept at hunting. If we take a look at the other 2 male leopards we used to see regularly in this area, Quarantine and Kunyuma, who are the sons of Karula, by the time they were independent from their mother, they were very capable hunters, and they were already quite large leopards. Whether he's still very small, probably smaller than most female leopards, even though he is taller than Shadow now, he doesn't have the bulk. So it'll be it is a very interesting time to watch what happens. And one thing we must always remember, just because we've seen it before and the guidebooks say this is how it should be, animals don't have to listen to it. They don't read the guidebooks. So it is a very interesting time, and I'm really glad we are here to document what's happening at the moment. So a serious de-fleeing and de-ticking in process at the moment. Oh, excuse me. Just going to have a look where he's off to. I don't think there's going to be too much movement. Looks like he's about to lie down again. So while we go from a semi-flat leopard, we're going to cross to some other flat spotted carnivores, and we'll be back with you a little later.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Wendy, where there is a little hyena having a bit of a meal. In fact, it is a massive meal, and we have been sat here now probably for the last half hour, and that hyena has failed to stick its head up once, but for when I hit a log, and it ceased its suckling for a little while and then went straight back to it. So not a huge amount of entertainment going on here at this hyena den, but it is wonderful to see them again. I haven't seen this youngster for at least 3 weeks, so very nice to see how its black fur is starting to turn spotty like its mum's. And just an interesting one there, you can see the scarring on the back of that mother, who we think is the matriarch of this clan, and she has been scarred. Viam was postulating possibly by a lion, and I think that's probably a good call. Maybe the nasty scrape of a lion's claw ripping across her back as she tried to escape from a kill, or as she tried to steal the kill from a large lion. And usually hyenas will carry on suckling for probably sometimes up to a year, but definitely for at least 6 months, and that's longer than most of the cats will keep doing it. They only wean quite late, and that's apparently, you'll read in the textbooks that that's because the adults do not bring meat and food to the den. We've comprehensively proved that to be absolute nonsense. We've seen them doing it, especially at the other den. They drag carcasses huge distances back to the den, so that the youngsters, probably not one this young, but certainly the slightly bigger ones, say about 8 or 9 months, so that they are able to start eating some meat. Because the youngsters are a real hindrance initially when they go on the hunt or the prowl with the adults. They just don't know what to do, and obviously they don't have the strength to keep up. You can see her ears are fairly torn to bits from a lifetime of running through some thick bush, probably squabbling with other hyenas at territorial fights, and of probably having so many cubs that like to play with the ears, of course. I believe you've had a magnificent morning with the other spotted cat of the area, Sindile the leopard, and he seems to be doing absolutely fine in the absence of his mother, which is wonderful. It's very unconfiding of that cub not to I think it's actually gone to sleep on the boob, as it were. And that is quite irritating, because we can't move the vehicle in here. There's lots of wood. It's a very, very clever den site. Completely unlike the other one, where you could drive around and around the termite mound without sort of having to worry about it. This one, there is wood all over the place. Wally bushes, and on the mound there a scotia tree or weeping bourbean tree, and then lots of combretum and knobthorn everywhere else. Just hear a hornbill coming in to visit, and all is at perfect peace here at the moment. That little cub is now fast asleep. We did come in here very early morning to check, and had absolutely no luck with anything, and then we came back, and obviously the adult had come back from its night of foraging, and the little one came out to feed. You can just hear the hornbill calling there. So the adults will be off foraging now. We did see another adult before we came here, that headed off into Buffelshoek to try and see if it could possibly find the Nkahuma pride, which is being tracked in Buffelshoek as we speak. And I think you'll find that I don't know how long you've been with us, but certainly for the new viewers, this hyena den is quite new, and the old one, there were another 2 generations of cubs that were just getting to the stage where they were old enough to start moving with the clan, and I haven't seen them here before, and I'm wondering if perhaps they are now not sort of that they haven't left the den permanently, and they're probably following the rest of the clan when it is on the prowl. And I think that's what's going on here. And while they won't prowl all day, what they will do is go and find somewhere nice to lie up under the ground, and they don't stay together all the time, especially in this area. They tend to forage far more independently than they would in an area, say, like the Serengeti, where they will hunt in clans of up to 50 individuals. Here they tend to forage alone, and I'm sure that this matriarch was probably prowling around during the course of the night, possibly even visiting us in our camp, where there was an enormous noise at about 12 o'clock last evening, and then coming back here once the night's foraging had been done to feed the youngster and see how she is doing. We still don't know yet what sex she is, but I'm going with a female. I think this is a female. There's a very nice question there from Donna about the catfish and the hyena, and Viam actually was saying the same thing about leopards. We've seen some enormous catfish in those drying puddles around some of the water holes. And Donna, you want to know if a hyena would eat a catfish. Donna, I'm pretty sure that they would, you know, and I said to Viam, I think the leopard would probably eat a catfish, but for the fact, remember now, that because they've been in that mud, a catfish that lives in the mud will taste like mud. Now, they're not particularly fussy eaters, these hyena, so I suspect at night they probably do go and eat the odd catfish. But maybe have a look at the Djuma Dam cam and keep watching there and see if that isn't the case. I can't ever remember seeing a hyena eat a catfish, though. Leopards certainly are known to fish, but I'm not sure about hyenas. I can't see any reason why they wouldn't eat a catfish, though. And while she does have quite a nasty scar on her back, she looks to be in pretty good nick otherwise. Hips are not showing, plenty of muscle all over the hips there. And then a question from Charlie about the survival rates of these cubs, and what would happen if this mother was severely injured and perhaps killed. Charlie, I think with the hyena youngster here would then unquestionably die. It is still suckling, and without that milk it would die, and they don't tend to cross suckle like lions do, apparently. Apparently they're fairly specific about what they're allowed to, who they're allowed to suckle. So I think that you'll find that this little cub would die quite quickly if this mother was killed. There are also, of course, the other mothers that spawned the other 2 generations will now no longer be lactating. So even if they did cross suckle, it would be unlikely that this cub would be allowed access to any of the milk from the other hyenas in the clan. Now in lions that is a little bit different. Lions will cross-suckle, and so will, say, really the best example of it is elephants, where if an elephant is orphaned, the herd will do its best to make sure that the little one survives through an adoption process. It's very frustrating having this little one just beyond our sight. And I'm afraid I can't move the vehicle in any way so that it could improve that situation. As you can see, a hyena, unlike a leopard, so you've been looking at pristine Sindile, who is magnificently sort of coloured and no scars on his body, and the same goes for his mum shadow, and indeed for a lot of the big males that we see, even those that have had fairly tumultuous lives. Now, that is because they will avoid physical confrontation at just about all costs. They really don't want to engage in any sort of physical fight, because if they do, of course, then they can't hunt. And if a leopard can't hunt, it will die. And the hyenas are not the same. They can afford to take far more risks because they're such effective scavengers and because they live in a clan. So they can rely on others to help them out. And the same goes for lions and for wild dogs. Which although, so if we look at a lion, for example, they're certainly not known for their egalitarian ways. But what they will do is kill. And if you're a limping lion in the pride, you can keep up and perhaps get something to eat. And that's why lions and hyenas tend to be a lot more scarred and beaten up than the pristine leopards we see around here. The little one is getting a little bit frustrated now, but you hear that? That's a woodpecker, everybody. That's a bearded woodpecker making its territorial tap. It's found itself a perfectly hollow tree somewhere around here. It's a perfectly hollow dead tree. There, I can see it. It's that lead. It's that. I think it's a dead knobthorn there. Can you see it there? Right. I can't see the tree, the bird, but I can see the tree. I'll keep an eye on the hyena in case it pops its heads up. That's a very territorial tap. It's not trying to find food when it does that. So we know it's a bearded woodpecker. Can you see it?
No, I don't see it.
And while we're sitting here listening to this woodpecker, a question from Rebecca, a very nice one from North America. You want to know if these woodpeckers make a horizontal line of holes like your sapsuckers in North America. No, they don't. They will tend to just, if they're drilling out a nest, then they will make a little hole sort of about that sized, and in they will go, and then that will be used by barbets afterwards, and parrots and various other birds. And then if they're foraging, they tend to just knock away the, you can hear them foraging. It's a very soft tapping, and they tend to just clean away the bark before pulling out whatever insects are there. And then they will drill into the wood to pull out beetles or other wood borers, or the larvae that have been laid there by wood borer beetles. But I think you'll find there that bearded woodpecker is not leaving a hole at all. It'll leave a dent, but it's found a very hard wood to make that tapping on, which is quite interesting. Thanks for that, Rebecca. We always like to get a few bird questions. Over a year old and supposedly not independent yet, I'm beginning to suspect that he's going to become independent before he thinks he should. And we've been looking at this hyena mother who's very clearly, very dedicatedly feeding her mum. And a very nice question from Marianne in Boston about whether or not hyenas are more dedicated mothers, and is that a function of the fact that they suckle for longer? Marianne, I don't think that they're necessarily more dedicated mothers. I do think that a huge amount of young leopard behavior is born of instinct. That Sindile has not accompanied his mother very often on kills, and you can see today he was stalking a steenbok. He seemed to have made a bit of a hash of it, but we think, Scott and I both think, and Brent in fact, think that he perhaps killed a steenbok yesterday evening and dragged it across the road and probably then had it stolen by hyenas. But he taught himself to do that. Now the point behind that is that because of that, the mother has to spend less time around him than she would otherwise. Absolutely, the fact that they do suckle for less time makes a big difference, but they do tend to learn to kill on their own much more quickly than, say, something like a hyena does. And I think it's a function also of the fact that they're in a pride, and not a pride, a clan, the hyenas. That means that they can afford to be around their babies for longer. They can afford to have a den because they're always around. There's always someone close by to look after the cubs. And when they go foraging, I think it's more complicated possibly as a hyena. And so I think there's a lot more learning going on than there is perhaps with the leopard. It's a very nice question and a very nice topic to discuss. And I'm not sure that the suckling length has much to do with it. It's probably the other way around, where the suckling length is a function of how much time is needed in and around the den as a hyena versus a leopard or a lion, which tends to wean a lot faster. Very nice question. Thank you, Marianne in Boston. I hope I've answered it. If I haven't, please send through another one with pleasure. The youngster is still, well, seems to have gone back to sleep now, although Mum is awake, definitely, listening to the woodpecker tapping away. It really is a remarkable sound. I'm getting a headache just thinking about bashing my head against a tree that hard. So we're listening to this bearded woodpecker thrashing his head against a hollow tree. And Heidi, you want to know how many woodpecker species we get here? Well, in the country, I think there are about 10. But in this particular area, the only ones that you can hear, or the only ones we get here, are 4 of them. The bennets, which is most obviously seen feeding on the ground. The cardinal, the little one with the male with his red cap. Well, I mean, lots of them have red caps, but he's named for it. He's the smallest. Then, of course, the bearded, which is the biggest and has the longest bill. And then the golden-tailed, which, like all the other woodpeckers, has a golden tail. I'm not sure why it was named for the golden tail versus the others. And its most distinctive feature is its very nasal, squeaking call. And that's the best way to identify that if you don't get a good view of him. But the bearded is the most obviously large one. And just to keep you posted on the lion situation, the Nkuhumas, like I say, a pride of 4 females, and now 4 sub-adult females, at least 2 sub-adult females and 1 getting large young male. They are being tracked on Buffelshoek, north of us. The Birmingham 5 are to the east of us on Torchwood, and to the south are all the rest of the lions. Djuma remains a lion-free zone at the moment, but at least we have magnificent Sindile, who has provided us now. I think he's into this might be day 7 on his own. Today is Thursday. He's probably on his own now for at least 6 days. And I wonder, he's starting to move a little bit more, and I wonder if he isn't in the process of basically thinking to himself, I don't know if mum's coming back, and maybe I need to start looking after myself. And as I'm sure you've noticed, he's not thin. He's definitely managing to kill on his own, which I think is just fantastic. So, before we go back and see Brent, he's just moved back in to see young Sindile, who I'm sure is going to provide further fantastic entertainment. Ramey, you want to know if they find these dens before they move the cubs in, or do they sort of take the cubs with them? No, absolutely, they know where the den sites are in their territories. They'll set them up, and so I suspect that before this cub was carried across here, and I'm pretty sure it would have been carried across, and it's quite a long way from the other den. I think that they would have excavated it, checked out what was going on, and then when the youngster went into the hole for the first time, she would have excavated herself an area that no other hyena and no other predator could possibly get to. And they do that because they need to be in a space that is small enough that no other predators can get to them. So I think we'll spend a little bit more time with these hyenas, see if they don't do something exciting, like a couple of backflips or perhaps hang from the tree. But while we are waiting for them to do that, we'll send you back to Brent and Sindile and see what he's doing. And enjoy that, and I will wait here with these hyenas and bring you back if they do anything.
Welcome back, everyone. As you can see, we are still with young Sindile. Just give me a second. I just need to help the other vehicle reposition. They've come in behind me. If you come around from the other side, you'll get a good view. There's not really a gap behind us here. So if you come back around towards the road and come through that side. Sorry about that, guys. So he's moved a little bit from where we last were, but no real action. A bit more ticking, but now just chilling out. And it's quite a nice weather for a young male leopard. Oh, and as we say that, he's on the move again. Perfect timing to come back to us from a flat cat to a mobile cat. Change direction again. He's directly behind some quarries now. He's going to stand by to see which way he moves before we do. So you can see, even in the green, that camouflage works incredibly well. So as I was saying, it's really nice weather for him at the moment. It's very cool. I actually felt a few little specks of rain a few seconds ago. So with this cool weather, it enables him to be a lot more active than if it got really hot. I wonder what he's off to terrorize next. Squirrels, francolin, steenbok. Hasn't seen anything yet. You can just tell that by his general body language. Don't you love it when they curl their tails around like that? He's still moving relatively stealthily. I don't think he's seen anything. Just having a smell around there. Could be lots of different things. Could have been a steenbok, could have been a duiker. So he's not as fat as he was when he was left here, but he has definitely eaten since his mother's left him here. And obviously catching lots of things, probably sustaining off birds, mostly francolins, and maybe even the odd squirrel and dwarf mongoose. But I mean, Scott did find those drag marks, so he did catch something bigger yesterday, but it looked like he got robbed by hyenas. Oh, he's going to have lie down. Still listening intently to something in those thickets ahead. For those of you who've been with us for the whole sunrise safari, we did see those young impala rams sparring not too far from this spot, but they did continue to move west, so possibly not them. So obviously there's quite a lot of speculation to where his mom might be, and a lot of viewers, I mean Anna Marie, Ellen, Monica, Sandy, are all wondering, has there been any update on Shadow? Not yet. No one seems to know where she is, and I've listened to the radio both from the Arathusa side and from the Djuma side, and there is no update on where Shadow is at the moment. So I think, who can tell me what day she was seen mating with Tingana, and we can work out how long this young male has been left alone to his own devices now. So who can tell me what day Shadow was seen mating with Tingana? And the day before was the last day they were seen together. Unfortunately, us who live out in the bush, the days seem to melt into each other, so we can't really remember how many days it was. So remember, you can let me know that by sending us an email on questions@wildearth.tv, or you can use the hashtag #SafariLive on Twitter. I do know there was a report of Shadow seen mating with the Anderson male on Elephant Plains, and that was obviously after she had been mating with Tingana. So I'm just going to hesitate to guess it's probably been 6 or 7 days since she left this young male here in this area, and he has stayed. He hasn't moved more than about 600 meters in that whole time. And I said he's been making all of us look very good, because we've managed to find him constantly, and we haven't really tracked him. It's quite difficult to track because there's just so many tracks crisscrossing this area. So basically what we do is we leave the cameraman and we just walk around till he pops his head up, and fortunately for us that has been quite regular. So he has definitely been making all of us guides look very good at the moment. So as we've mentioned quite a few times, that it's not all doom and gloom for young Sindile that he's been left alone by Shadow. And Blair's just passed on some information. One of the properties to the south of us had a young male leopard named Nyanga, who was abandoned by his mother at 11 months, so even younger than Sindile, and he managed to survive to adulthood. So by no means is it sort of a death sentence for him. It is just going to make it that little bit harder, and he is especially going to have to avoid other male leopards. It's probably going to be his biggest threat now that he's got over the age where he's more than capable of avoiding hyenas and lions should be, but other male leopards are probably going to be his biggest threat going forward. You spot something, Andrew?
Me?
I think I know what he spotted. Did you spot the drongo on top of that? Yes. See, there we go. Andrew spotted a fork-tailed drongo sitting on top of a tree off to the south of us. Making lots of noise and looking for insects, but doesn't look to be actively hunting at the moment, rather just actively making a calling. And Mr. Sindile has now gone very, very still. There's a francolin approaching him, Andrew. There's a whole covey of francolins, so that's what he heard. And there we go. If you have a look at his ears now, so just beyond where he is, there are some francolin. He unfortunately is not in a good space to make a jump at them with that very thick bush in between, and they're going to walk right behind him. And there we go. Let's see how subtly he can turn while keeping his body flat to the ground. There's a francolin walking right at him. Stay a little bit wider, Andrew. They're literally about a little bit to the left. To the left of it.
Not over the show.
There's the closest one's just to the left, almost on top of him now. There we go. You can see on the left of screen. Walking right at him, and he's flattened his body almost completely. And there's others coming in from the front. Oh, that's up. He's literally surrounded by a covey of francolins at the moment. And he just happened to be lying in the wrong spot, I think, there. There is one still right in front of him, but I think the most likely one is slightly to the right. But no, it's also going to move in front of him. You can see how flat his ears are. And he tried to sort of slide around, but he's definitely not in a position to spring at the moment. That's not to say he won't attempt it. Might see now he's going to try to turn around and try not to be spotted by the francolin. I think he may have just been spotted. There's a francolin just to the left. There we go, that one looked like it might have spotted him, and he looks like he's given up on a poultry breakfast. But the one positive for him there is the fact that they didn't burst off in alarm calls and notify everything else where he is. So even impala and other antelope will take notice of francolin alarm calls and other bird alarm calls to signify a possible predator. So that's possibly the best out of a worst scenario for young Sindile. He wasn't lying in a very effective spot to make a pounce, and we can see, and especially after that steenbok hunt we witnessed, or attempted hunt we witnessed this morning, he is showing a lot more patience than he was even a few weeks ago. And obviously being left alone for so long, that patience is very important when it comes to actually catching something and not rushing. And I remember I quite often when I was younger, I had a very bad habit of rushing everywhere and achieving nothing. And I had a very, very amazing art teacher. He took me aside and he taught me a little Latin saying, "Festa lenta," rush slowly. So hopefully young Sindile is learning to rush slowly. So there's Franklin have moved off now, and almost none the wiser that there was a leopard right there. Thank you very much to Morning Glory, Blair and Pretty Nightmare, who said Shadow and Cub were together on the 20th and she was seen mating with Tingana on the 21st. And I am not sure what date it is today, but as I said in the bush here, the days and weeks and whatnot just tend to blend into each other. What is the date today? 25th, 26th? Somewhere around there. So at least 5 or 6 days that he's been on his own. It could even be it's the 27th, I think. So he's been on his own for a week. And I think the next 3 days are going to be quite interesting to see whether he moves off. So that 10 days of actually being physically alone and having no contact with his mother. Not that he looks upset at all. He seems very content at the moment. Andrew, if you go off, I don't know if you're going to be able to grab it, but through the Sisyphus here, okay, zoom in. And to the left a bit, and up a bit, and you can hear it. You just see where you are. Okay, there we go. To the left a little bit more, and down, and zoom from there, center frame. There we go. We can see a little, looks like a cardinal woodpecker feeding off. There we go. There he is, feeding off a dry branch. It's quite unusual to see woodpeckers that low to the ground hammering away, but there he is. It looks like a little male cardinal woodpecker. For those of you who are keeping a bird list, I'm sure quite a lot of you have this, but just in case, here's a male cardinal woodpecker. After wood borer beetles and longhorn larvae. Young Sindile was catnapping. He's just lifted his head slightly, but not showing too much movement at the moment. But on a cool day like this, that's not to say he is going to not move. I'm quite sure he will scurry and scuttle about here. And one of the benefits of lying up in a nice little quarry thicket like this is that he does have the possibility of something stumbling into him as they move through feeding. So we're not going to move, we're just going to cross here across to Commander Bond so he can say goodbye, and then we'll spend the last few minutes of the sunrise safari with young Sindile.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Wendy. We've come back to we left the hyena still suckling, very relaxed, not doing a whole lot. There's another hyena just to the right of us here at Gowrie Waterhole, but we thought we'd stop by here quickly before the end of the drive, where the catfish are still trying to eke out a living in this fairly nasty mud, and in so doing they are attracting the attentions of these storks. Not the buffalo, not to be ignored. I don't talk a huge amount about buffalo when Viam is on the car. He tends to get frustrated by them for some reason. But the storks, we saw them at Buffelshoek Dam earlier. They've just landed here, and just like the marabou storks, they're kind of smaller, stockier, uglier cousins, they are thinking twice about going in there and trying to catch some of those catfish because they are so large. Now, we did have a very interesting question just now when we were with the hyena about whether hyenas would eat catfish, and that hyena that we've just seen is just laying down there. It's in the water. Sorry, we can't get there without totally shaking the car to pieces. The hyena is now oh God, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to quickly go there. There's a hyena bathing, leaping around in the fresh water there, and I think that it was eating. I think it's very muddy, and I think it was in that mud there trying to get hold of a catfish or two. So very astute question asked there about hyenas and catfish. There are two hyenas here now, one of them swimming, the other standing outside the water. Don't want to make a big noise and frighten them. One is still in the water, frolicking about. Oh, please don't go anywhere, this is wonderful. This is unbelievable. I've never seen this before. Hello?
It doesn't smell much better after
Hi.
that.
I've never had an adult hyena do that. It's just sub-adult. Having a drink. So you can see, well, I don't know if you can see, but this is not a fully grown adult. I think slightly sub-adult, almost adult. But having a great time frolicking in the water. A bit like a Labrador released on a river. How wonderful to see. Brilliant. Now the other one has just gone off towards the dam. In fact, it's called, here it comes. Here it comes, Viam. There we go. Tails up in greeting. Maybe they found something. The tail up is just so amusing. They're the only animals I know that do that, except as well the honey badgers. They also do that. So let's maybe just go a little bit closer. See if we can't get a look at what they're either rolling in or trying to eat. Yeah, I suppose I should put it in gear there. What are they doing? To be rolling around in something. They've smelt something. They may have been marking with their anal glands. So we will go a little bit over time just to see exactly how this plays out and what's going on. Tail's right up, very excited. You can actually see the anal gland there, VM, if you will. Yeah, I don't know that viewers need to see that at all. This is really interesting. That tail up is a sign of excitement. It's also a sign of kind of threat, or that they are marking territory or something the same like that. And you can see that I suspect they look to be the same age. They're probably siblings. And I wonder if they aren't on a territorial boundary, or perhaps they've smelt the presence of another clan. And very unusual for a hyena that age to come up to the car as close as this one did. Oof, can you smell that, VM?
Yeah, well.
They absolutely stink. We'll just see what they do. I picked up the scent of something. And you can hear the squirrels now starting to alarm call at them. That's probably the action that we're going to get out of this. We'll just see if for 20 seconds if they don't. Oh, here they come back again. That fence you can see is Vuyatela. Look at this. They've come back to the same spot where they were smelling originally. Vim, can you see anything on the ground there that they might be going for?
Negative. There's not even a weight.
You can hear the squirrels alarming at them. Maybe one of them is marked with the anal gland there. Maybe on that stick that they've just left. So nice to see hyenas like this. You know, we just don't get to spend enough time with them, I don't think. Mainly because they're active at night so much more than they are during the day. And I'm sure they're running around doing ridiculously fascinating things like they're doing now at night when we are fast asleep. Something odd is going on here with them. They're almost like two youngsters at a nightclub. Of course, they're nocturnal, so they come to a day club. And they're kind of at the end of their evening, frolicking about in the water. Now they've picked up something and they're looking for a bit of trouble. Ridiculous that tail looks. fascinating. Nice way to end the drive. I'm going to suddenly appear in picture where I've been lying down here underneath the steering wheel, trying to avoid getting my head in the way. It's been a lovely drive. Started off with a lovely elephant, various other small and fascinating things that we saw, and then I hope you enjoyed your incredible morning with Sindile. We're going to take you straight across to him for another small view, and Brent will wrap the drive up for us. But before we do that, a big thank you to Viam on camera, very patient with me today as we drove around most of Djuma looking for various kinds of sign of lion, which obviously there aren't, but a wonderful hyena sighting there to finish off the day. So big thanks to Viam, a big thanks to Tara and to Kirsty, directing and making sure that things run smoothly, and of course a huge thank you to all of you for your time mostly, and then for your questions and for your comments. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you this afternoon with whatever this magnificent wilderness has to bring us. So have a great afternoon.
So welcome back everyone, and what a fantastic sighting you guys must have had with James. Hyenas hunting catfish, that's definitely a first for me. Definitely really looking forward to seeing that footage when we get back this morning. But we're still here with young Sindile, who's moved off into a thicket now, and he's probably going to rest in here for a while. Hopefully for him something tasty meanders along close by. But from Andrew and myself here on the Jigger, we've had a great sunrise safari, and we've definitely seen an improvement in Sindile's hunting techniques, and maybe more time alone will definitely improve those techniques even further. So thanks very much for the questions, and thanks for joining us. Don't forget to join the sunset safari, and that'll be James and Scott this evening. I'll be out on tracking team. Also remember, from tomorrow morning we are going to be having new times. We're going to be half an hour earlier in the mornings and half an hour later in the evening. So half an hour earlier on the sunrise safaris and half an hour later on the sunset safaris. From myself and Sindile and Andrew, have a fantastic rest of your day or morning or evening, depending on where you are in the world. And for the last few seconds, let's have a look at one of our favorites, animals and characters out here on Safari Live.